All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here to The Full Story on WYAB 103.9 as we get to our next story. And Trump has made yet another cabinet decision. A little bit of spoiler there from the CNN News. I was kind of waiting to drop it on you, and then they kind of stole my thunder on the CNN News brief there. But anyway, he has made yet another cabinet decision, and Pete Hegseth has been selected by President-elect Trump to serve as his Secretary of Defense. Again, one of the most important positions in the cabinet. And, I love, this is my favorite time to talk, I love talking about, this is like our fantasy football, right, in the politics. Because we try to think about who we want to put on our team, right? Again, all the sports people get to talk about fantasy. This is our fantasy football, except the difference is that these picks matter for people's lives. Unlike athletes, which have no effect on people's lives. So to me, it's a much more important fantasy football. But like I said, Pete Hegseth has been chosen as his department as the Secretary of Defense to head the DoD. Trump said in a statement, quote, "I am honored to announce that I have nominated Pete Hegseth to serve in my cabinet as the Secretary of Defense. Pete has spent his entire life as a warrior for the troops and for the country. Pete is tough, smart, and a true believer in America first." Hegseth's selection was a surprise, as he was not among those considered as a likely pick by members of Trump's team, according to sources familiar with discussions told CNN. Sources said that it came down to Trump having a long-standing relationship with Hegseth, noting that the president-elect always thought he was smart and was impressed by his career. Hegseth, who is an Army National Guard veteran who served tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, has also hosted the Fox Nation Patriot Awards since 2019, which is the network's version of Hollywood award show honoring heroes like first responders. Hegseth also hosted the popular Fox Nation specials Poison Ivy and the Miseducation of America, as well as the weekend show Fox and Friends on the Weekend. He also wrote the book bestseller War on Warriors, which has sold nearly 150,000 copies since it debuted in June 2024 and shot to number 1 on the New York Times bestseller list. Hegseth has repeatedly advocated for military veterans and championed veteran and military causes. While serving in the Army, he was awarded 2 Bronze Stars and a Combat Infantryman's Badge, which what infantrymen get when they serve in active combat. Trump said Pete is tough, smart, and a true believer in America first. With Pete at the helm, America's enemies are on notice. Our military will be great again, and America will never back down. Nobody fights harder for the troops, and Pete will be courageous and a patriotic champion of our peace through strength policy. Hegseth is I think is a great choice for a lot of reasons, because he has not been one of these generals that's been around since Biden. And I've talked about how horrible the generals have been in the Department of Defense, and he's been kind of outside of it as well, which I think is needed so badly in the Department of Defense. So in his book, The War on Warriors, he said he criticized a lot of things that the current military has done, which I think are some legitimate criticisms. And one of the things was allowing women into combat roles. And he spoke last week on the Sean Ryan show that, quote, "It hasn't made us more effective, hasn't made us more lethal, has made fighting more complicated. We've all served with women, and they're great, but our institutions don't have to incentivize that in places where traditionally, or not traditionally, over human history, men in those positions are more capable." Hegseth later said that he took issue specifically with women in physical, labor-intensive jobs, such as those with the Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, Army Special Forces, Marine Special Operations, and jobs such as those in infantry, armor, and artillery units. He said, "I'm talking about something where strength is a differentiator." And again, this is what I talk about when I say returning to common sense, right? The Democrats have used the military as their social platform the last few years, and it has ruined it. They have just completely thrown out any kind of common sense whatsoever for their agenda. And again, I think for me personally, I'm not against women in combat roles. They just have to pass the same physical test, right? If you're going to be expected to fight alongside a man, then you should be able to carry that man out of combat and be able to take him down with your fists, right? You'd be able to engage that man in hand-to-hand combat and take him out. If you cannot do so, then you cannot be in that. Nor should anybody, right? If you're a man and you can't pass those physical tests to be an infantryman, you shouldn't be an infantryman. You shouldn't be a ranger, right? I mean, that's just the way it is, because your life is dependent on the people to the left and right of you. And if you cannot do that, then you're a liability to the lives of all of those who serve with you and alongside you. That's just common sense. It has nothing to do with sexism, right? It's just like allowing transgender people to play in women's sports. It doesn't make sense. There is no common sense to it. They are physically stronger than the women they are competing against, and it's unfair to the women, right? It's the same thing. Just return common sense to the military, and let's focus on the mission of destroying our enemies. That's the mission. It's real simple. Just destroying our nation's enemies and protecting the homeland. That's what it is. Anything that's not within those strict parameters is something that should not exist. It's that simple. Return to common sense in the Department of Defense. That's what we need. That's what I like about Hegseth, is that he's someone who is outside of that traditional realm. He's not someone who's been inundated in the Pentagon and been just thrown with these unnecessary trainings. When Biden got into the presidency, they started having us take extremism classes. They had to talk about how extremists we were, about nationalism, and how we were bad at being nationalists. If you're a nationalist, you're a bad person. Well, it's like this. Well, if you're a nationalist, I want you in the United States Army because you believe this country is the best country that ever existed, and you're willing to die for it. If that's nationalism, that's what we need in the Army. And it's time that we got back to that kind of thing, instead of pushing those people out, having our recruitment numbers very, very low, to the fact that we're combat ineffective right now. This is where it needs to get back to, and I hope that someone like Hegseth can bring it back. Hegseth has also criticized the military's diversity programs, saying on the same podcast, quote, "Woke crap has got to go." He said the S word, not crap, but same thing. Woke crap has got to go, and it absolutely does. The military has gone so woke over, especially the last 4 years, right? I saw it firsthand. I saw how that affected the mission, how that affected the morale of people. People just left. They're not joining, and they're leaving in groves. People with excellent combat experience that I can't do this anymore. I can't be in this administration that doesn't respect what I do and what I stand for. And that's something that must go. They have that whole idea of DEI in the military doesn't exist. The thing about the military is it is an equalizer regardless of who you are or where you're from. It is an equalizer, and that is strictly about physical and mental prowess. If you can't cut it, you don't get in. It doesn't matter who you are. That's real simple. All you got to do is meet those requirements. It is by itself a natural equalizer, and that's what we need to get back to. And Hegseth said, it says, either you're in for war fighting and that's it. That's the only litmus test we care about. You've got to get DEI and CRT out of military academies so you're not training young officers to be baptized in this type of thinking. And I could not agree more with that at all. I mean, that guy is hitting the nail on the head with this problem. And now I'm seeing why Donald Trump picked him, because he sees those problems we have in the military, and he is going to go out those 100%. We have to take those out. The problem you have right now, though, is now you've had 4 years of these officers coming through here that have been inundated with that. And hopefully they can change their mind and get back to the war-fighting mission, or they're going to have to move out as well as we get in and get back to what the military is there to do, which, again, is to destroy our enemies and protect the homeland. And, again, Donald Trump did that when he was there. I saw it. I was there under Donald Trump as well. And the amount of morale that just dropped when Biden got in, they started throwing in all their woke crap and had people leave because they couldn't stand for it, hurts our country. And it's time we got back to just common sense. That's the underlying thing with all of these picks and all of these policies is common sense. Let's get back to it. It's not that hard. And Hegseth seems like, as I learn about him and read about him, why he's going to be such a great pick for that. And it may anger people in the Pentagon, and good for him, right? If those generals can't handle it, they need to get out. because we don't want them there anyway. They need to get out and leave room so we can come back and bring back a great military. Let's make the military great again as well, right? It goes right in there with it. All right. We're going to take our last break right here. When we get back, we're going to do This Day in History. But keep it tuned to the full story on WYAB 103.9.